Well, thank you. I appreciate the love and the energy. I am a leadership development coach, author, and speaker, and I am just so honored to have this time with you all. So we're going to have a great conversation, but let me bring these ladies up and give them a round of applause as we bring them up, if you will. So we have Asha Hope. She's the Vice President of the Diversity, Equity, Inclusion for Bayer. Give her a hand. Next, we have Emily Nichols-Mitchell. She is an outcome-driven coach and leadership strategist. Come on up, Emily. And then we have Dana Paige. She is a senior associate vice president, Center of Excellence Financial Alliance leader at Nationwide. So give the entire panel a round of applause again. All right, ladies, so when we talk about leadership, as I mentioned, it's a big word, and oftentimes for all the right reasons, you know, we either feel inspired or, unfortunately, we can be not inspired by leaders. So walk me through your experience, or what do you find as the qualities of great leadership? And then on the second part of that is, how have you developed those characteristics over time while being authentic to who you are? Asha,
Thank you, and thank you so much for this beautiful audience. It's so good to see all of these smiling faces and to really think about what it means to lead like a boss. So that title in itself is exciting, right?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
So for me, it's important to offer empowerment versus overpowering. So it's exciting to me to talk about leading like a boss, but also thinking about the characteristics of being legendary. So for me, I want to leave a legacy wherever I am. And what that looks like in real life for me is giving my team the autonomy to make decisions. And autonomy means whether it's resources, whether it's projects, whether it's the autonomy to talk to individuals. We definitely want to get rid of bureaucracy, but leading to me is definitely about autonomy to make decisions. In addition to that, it's about listening, and not listening just to wait so you can answer, but listening to understand, not being afraid of the awkward pause, and understanding that silence is not a bad thing. So listening to understand, listening to provide a point of view when it's wanted, and otherwise just being present and valuable for your team. And lastly, it's about paying it forward. So many of you may be like me. I didn't arrive here without additional people to help me along the way, whether it was my family, mentors, sponsors, etc. So for me, I do my best to be available. And I know in times like this, it's hard to be available, but I had so many informational interviews along the way in my own journey. And I asked tough questions of people who were open to letting me come in their office and just have conversations. So for me, paying it forward and offering that space to individuals that want to learn more, individuals that want to be inspired, I do my best to provide that space. Not necessarily being a mentor for everyone, but offering the space to have conversations and provide valuable feedback. So that's what it looks like for me. And
go ahead.
Okay.
I was going to say, Emily, you want to answer, and then I'll come back to you.
Oh, I love what she said. First, thank you. I mean, if you guys could see, wow, what I see. This is such an awesome space. You guys look beautiful. Yeah. And, I mean, this is awesome. So here's what I would add. I would add there's three things. You want to be confident, you want to be intentional, and you want to be bold. But for us as Black women, leadership is not just about what you know. It's about how you use what you know. Because when we walk into the room, every now and then, people are looking at us. They're waiting for us to say the wrong thing. Sometimes being a little dismissive. Has that ever happened to you? Raise your hand. No, don't raise your hand. Your boss might. Don't do that. But one thing that happened to me, I had a coach, and she said, Emily, you do not have to be the loudest person in the room, but you do need to speak up more. You do need to speak up and let your voice be heard. And when you speak, be clear, be concise, and be direct. So one afternoon, I was in a high-stakes meeting, and I was the only one in the room. I was the only black woman in the room. And I could feel the weight of it all. I could feel them looking at me and thinking, But let me tell you what I did. Instead of showing up feeling like I had to prove something, I did a mental fitness shift. And I showed up and I listened. I breathed, and then I spoke. I spoke with clarity. I was concise, and I was direct. And one of the things I realized in that moment, everyone else took note. So if it's one thing I've learned over the years, is it's not always about you feeling, ladies and gentlemen, like you always got to prove yourself. It's about you owning and showcasing your leadership voice.
That's good.
So when you think about the next time you walk in the room, walk in with authority. Walk in like you own the space. You do.
Absolutely. Dana, you want to add to that?
Listen, how can I follow that? I mean, what we've learned today is that you have to walk into your light. You've got to push through the discomfort, and you have to be adaptable. We heard from such great speakers earlier today, and that's what spoke to me, is that they adapted for the moment. They adapted themselves. They continued to hone their skills. They listened to other people. They had a mission, whether that mission was for themselves or that mission was for their organization. They lived their purpose with integrity, adaptability, for the results, whatever the outcome that they were looking. So I think one of my biggest lifelong journey learnings for myself is to adapt and to pick up and learn from all of these great women that are in the room and that have come in my career, and steal a little bit from them. See what works for them, and then how you can adapt it for yourself so that you can execute in your mission.
I love it. I think something that you all have been talking about, it makes me think about that word of authenticity, right? So I think my first question is, how do you show up in those rooms as a leader? Because sometimes people can have perceived notions of what leadership looks like or what leadership is. How have you balanced being who you are authentically with being a leader?
I would say, I'll take that question. I would say when you show up with a purpose. Show up when you speak with authority. And don't worry about what other people are thinking, because that's their problem. Don't shrink to make someone else's light shine. Because, sister, God made you for this. He made your light brilliant. And so if you walk in your light and you show up with purpose, and you show up and you speak up, especially when you're afraid, that's when it's going to matter the most. Because I learned over the years that when I was intentional about how I showed up, about listening, I was able to listen actively. I was able to listen very different. I knew when to speak, and I knew when to let it go. And one big lesson that I've learned that helped me to stay authentic is perfectionism is a trap. Y'all got that? How many perfectionists do we have? Okay, never mind, don't raise your hand. I'm sorry, I keep asking y'all to raise your hand when you shouldn't. Just look to the person to your left and to your right and say, don't do that. But it was, earlier on in my career, it was my trap. It kept me from speaking up. It kept me from walking authentically, because I was always waiting for permission. I was always waiting to, okay, let me make sure I got this right. One of the things I've learned from one of my male counterparts earlier in my career was, he said, Emily, when women talk, we gotta be exact. He said, when men talk, they're kind of broad. I said, give me an example. He said, if I ask you what is the temperature, what will you say? I said, hold on, let me get my phone. I was looking for the exact temperature. He said, exactly. Ask me. He said, oh, it's gonna be in the 70s to 80s today.
That's right.
He said, and he was very confident about that. He said, when you get on the elevator and it's your moment to shoot your shot, he said, and you're talking to the CEO and it's you and the CEO, and he says, how's the weather today? Don't get out your phone and start looking up at the exact weather. He doesn't care about that. He wants to know if you can own that conversation. If he's asking you for data, so tell me about this quarter's earnings in whatever that is. Tell me about the data in talent acquisition. You don't have to say 92.9.99. Hold on, let me get back to you, because you know there's a range. Speak with authority.
That's right.
And be very clear. And then he'll ask you for more information if he needs it.
That's right, Emily. I think you're bringing up a really good point there. It's just being exact, and there's some different shifts that we might need to make as women, or even sometimes men. Let's talk about for a minute, dig deeper into that. Obviously, all as Black women here on the stage, as leaders, what has that experience been like as a Black woman leading? Obviously, you all have held or continue to hold very senior roles. Dana, what has that experience been like for you? And have there been moments where you realize your superpower?
I think a great story that sticks with me and that I tell very often, especially to younger women that I mentor, is about resilience and being able to persevere in all types of situations. I remember very early in my career, I was young, I was Black, I was female, and I found myself in a sun-filled boardroom with private equity billionaires. I walked in the room, it was all men, older white men, and it was almost as if their mouths dropped when I walked into the room. What? So at first, I was like, okay, I was, again, in my late 20s and full of myself, and I was prepared for that meeting, and I took my seat as the lead underwriter in that meeting. And the questions were like, why are you here? I mean, it was wildly inappropriate, but I was prepared. And by the end of that meeting, they knew I knew their business almost as well as they knew their business. So I often think about a Greek philosopher, Seneca, says, luck is when preparation meets opportunity. And so I walked in that room and I represented the corporation that was going to respond to their billion-dollar risks because I was prepared. And I walked away from that knowing that I could change hearts and minds. But I tell that story, yes, it was a personal triumph. Yes, I had to be resilient. Yes, I had to persevere through an uncomfortable situation. But for every one of those triumphs, I can tell you about the microaggressions, the C-suite, uncomfortable, professional men who were trying to break me down. I said trying to break me down.
That's right.
But I continue to show up. I continue to show up. And what I also learned is the environment that I plant myself in. I am extremely privileged to be with an organization that sees my talent, that invests in my talent, that's on my side. Yes, I had to plug Nationwide.
I love that. And I think that's a very real story that so many in the room could probably relate to, unfortunately, for so many reasons, Dana. And keeping that in mind, there are so many women in the room at different stages of their careers. What would you say to a younger Black woman coming through the ranks? about how to own whatever room she's in, whether she's a people manager or not, whatever her title is. What would you say to that, Asha?
So I would say, first of all, I started my career as an engineer, and I shifted to HR. So very early, I was one of the ones that had to give myself a pep talk. Being a Black woman, engineer, chemical engineer, oftentimes the only Black person in a room. So I learned very quickly the power of an internal pep talk. And to be honest, how we say, stay ready so you don't have to get ready, I have found myself over-preparing, even through the years, to make sure I can show up with confidence. So showing up with confidence feels a little different when you haven't done your research, when you haven't done your job to make sure you can answer the questions that will come to you. So for me, it's being self-aware. So preparation is also saying, hey, I don't know, and I don't understand. So how do I go to the people that do know the answers and they do understand? So my recommendation would always be to stay ready so you don't have to be ready, get ready, and do your part to find the necessary people that can help you answer the questions that you don't know the answers to. Because for me, there's nothing more than to posture and appear that you know what you're talking about when you really don't. So that's my perspective.
That's a really good point. What would you say to that, Emily? What would you say to the younger women in the room?
I might have already said this, but if you're walking in the room, walk in the room like you own the room. Walk in the room like you deserve to be there, because you do. And I don't care if you are the only woman in the room, the only Black woman in the room, or the youngest person in the room. If you're in the room, you need to be there. And as you walk in the room with executive presence. Command the room with respect before you say anything. And I don't mean being arrogant or haughty. I mean by being certain. The certainty that you own the space. As Dana was talking about, she owned her space when she walked in the room. Come with certainty that your voice matters. Because if you don't think your voice matters, no one else will. Come with certainty that you have something powerful and valuable to contribute, and they need you in the room. Do you hear what I'm saying? They need you in the room. And that's a different mindset perspective. When you walk into the room, not only are you prepared, but they need you there. And when you start to shift that they need you there, oh, that confidence really does go in a whole different direction. So just as you're going in the room, make sure that you're going in with that confidence. And if I could say one more thing, just know when you get in the room, there are going to be some people playing chess while you might still be playing checkers. What do I mean by that? That means there's going to be some people in the room that's thinking 5 steps ahead. Those individuals, they're strategizing. They are positioning themselves. And the third thing is they're elevating their self for the next power move. So I'm going to ask each of you, when you go into your next meeting, observe who's actually 5 steps ahead that's making the power moves. Because you have 2 choices. One choice is you can stand on the sidelines, complain, and watch. The other choice is you can learn chess like a pro, and you can checkmate. But that's your choice.
Absolutely. I love that analogy. Some people are playing chess because your career is about strategy, and you need to be strategic. It doesn't happen by coincidence. Dana, what would you add to that?
All of my panelists are making excellent points. The only thing I'd add is sometimes I think it's wonderful to be empowered to think confidently, to know your skills, to invest. But sometimes you have to be humble and surround yourself with people who are going to say, Dana, you're fabulous, but you need to work on X, Y, Z. Because so often we talk about board of advisors or board of directors, different people who are cheerleaders for you or who support you or love you. And I'm proud that my husband, my son, my sisters, all of my family are so very supportive, my extensive network. But you need that one person who's like, you need to go back and think about how you did X, Y, Z. And we tend to push those people away. And those are the people that are going to continue to elevate your game. I had the good fortune very early in college to be around an award-winning coach, and he was extremely hard on his basketball players. And they hated him, but they all believed in his message. And many of them went on to the NBA. And I always thought that that was strange. But years later at reunions, they would say, yeah, but he told me. Everybody else, I was an all-American, and I was this, and I was that, but he told me where my threats were, my weaknesses, and that elevated my game. So I think it's very important for us to walk into rooms confidently, to know who we are, to continue to invest in ourselves, be lifelong learners. But it is important to have that board of directors, people who are going to say, you need to do this differently.
I love that balanced approach there because, when I think of, there's that balance of hashtag confidence, right, that we can so easily lean into, and also balance that with learning and being willing to hear feedback. Mm-hmm. It is, the right feedback is a gift. And the worst thing that you cannot know is what that feedback is or what that perception is as you're moving along, because those can be the reasons why, if you're not playing the chess game, that you aren't promoted, that you don't advance, because there are perceptions about you, your brand, your work, that you're not even aware of. And so I always invite people to, especially as they're moving in their career, to get that feedback, filter through people that you might trust or at least respect and have that perspective so that you know how to play the game and move ahead. But that's really all great points. I want to ask you another question about leading teams, because leadership sounds good. It looks good. The title is great. But we all know that leadership can be very difficult at times. Let's talk about that for a minute. What is that, when you think about those difficult times, what do you remind yourself of to navigate those moments? I'll ask you that, Asha.
Yes, so like I mentioned, that I started my career as an engineer, and at my first HR role, I was able to utilize transferable skills to land an HR role. And then I wanted to be in diversity and inclusion. At that time, just diversity and inclusion, right? So I was able to land a role based on my passion for diversity and really strengthening and developing people. I had no experience. I had to learn in that space. My second diversity and inclusion role, I was hired by someone in HR that didn't have diversity and inclusion experience. I had the experience. So I gave those examples because I really feel like as you're building teams and you're going through the challenging times, it is a mosaic of strengths that really help you build high-performing teams. So someone may be a specialist in one area, someone else is a specialist in another area, but it's bringing those pieces together that really build the team that you're looking to have in a challenging time. And for me, and we say at my company, Bear, all the time, it's where do people have the energy to work? So now it's more about how do we build the strengths of individuals, but also give them autonomy to pick the projects, be agile, and offer an opportunity for them where they can be at their best. at their best, whether it's personally or professionally, because they're able to bring their best skills, their best set of skills to a team in which you're trying to have high performance. So for me, it's about how do you pull people together, how do you bring those skills together and effectively impact an organization.
That's really good. Emily, what about you? How do you navigate those difficult moments?
Well, first of all, when I'm going through those difficult moments, I remember that my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ said he would never leave or forsake me, and he would never put anything on me I can't bear. But when I'm going through those toxic managers, I know that's just my experience, and the workload seems unsurmountable, I realize it's not happening to break me. It's happening to build my mental muscle. Because if I'm here and I understand how to play chess at this level, then I can move on to the next level. And when I get to that level, what I learned down here now becomes part of my DNA. I've also learned that when you are leading, there's a difference as you move up the ranks in leading. You move from being a manager to a leader. And when I'm coaching people, I find that we move up the ranks in many cases because of our performance and our skill, but we don't shift our language. Our mindset doesn't shift to where we're now moving, as she was saying, to where we're getting the most out of our team. We move from managing the projects that they're working on and the deadlines to inspiring them. And I want you to think back to that toxic manager that you had. Don't be like them. And sometimes that's our only role model, bad or good. So I'm gonna challenge you, when you go back, think about what your trigger points are. What emotional agility do you need to regulate inside of yourself, so you know when those trigger points start to happen and you know what to do about it? But also social regulate your team. Know their trigger points. Know how to ask them powerful questions, because you have all of them around the table for a purpose. And just as I said, when you walk in the room, you own the room, allow them to own it as well. And sometimes we're so busy wanting to speak, we don't allow silence in the room. So as you're thinking about it, think about your emotions, think about your trigger points, and think about how you can be the leader that other people want to follow. And to your feedback, get feedback from everyone, even those that don't like you. Because here's the thing, when I'm working with a client, and they are always afraid of the feedback, and I tell them, welcome the feedback, because now we know what to work on. Because if not, we might be working on something over here that you think is important, but they're still stuck over here having a challenge of something you're unaware of. That's your blind spot. But if we know your blind spots, now we're working on what's important to them, along with what's important to you. And now you can show up in your unique brilliance, confident and prepared.
I love it. Dana, anything to add there?
Simply, I think the audience is going to get tired of me saying about being adaptable. I think leadership styles have to be situational. Very often in my career, I would come guns blazing. I had to be the alpha leader in the room to get the team to whatever outcome. And sometimes that's what was required. And other times I had to be the sigma. I had to see that I had to empower different leaders on my team. They were the ones who were pushing forward, and I was coming up in the rear. So I think it's very important. I learned that from observing other leaders and seeing the results that they were having. So I would urge everyone to continuously be adaptable, see what the situation requires, and look within yourself to be prepared to be able to pivot for the situation, depending on what's needed at that time.
All those are great points, and I think of also laying in humility, right? In those times when I think you mentioned, Asha, you may not always have the answers, and it's okay. Leadership doesn't require, as you mentioned, Emily, perfection. Doesn't mean you're not a good leader. In fact, a great leader can admit when they don't know something. And so I find that those have been the times where when I didn't know something or I needed to navigate, to raise my hand, take off the cape for a moment and say, I need some help here. I don't know that, I don't understand this. So all great feedback or thoughts. What are, as you all have come to different levels of leadership, it doesn't happen by coincidence. You alluded to it again, talking about playing chess. So you all have clearly been playing chess at some point in some kind of way.
Checkmate.
Right? The checkmate. So what do you believe have been those strategies and that information or those resources? What has been in your toolkit for success to help you get to where you are today? What would you say to that, Asha?
So I would say utilizing every experience as a building block for the next one. And I think it's important to really hone in on what you can get from every experience as well as every person. And I feel as if in my career, I've been able to tap into those experiences and people in an effort to really build my toolbox to take me to the next place. And also recognizing some instances, everything you have in your toolbox does not help with this experience. So it's again about, how do you build a network of people? How do you build that board of directors that will tell you the truth, but also instill in you some of those things that you may have missed along the way? Because again, I try my best to be self-aware and understand when I don't necessarily have the tool or the skill to move forward in the direction that I would like to, but I have a lot of people that have been where I'm trying to go. So I recognize that. I also recognize that there are some individuals that may not look like me that I have to tap into as well. It took me a long time, I have to be honest, to accept that, I need to build that muscle too and have a lot of conversations with folks that don't look like me. Not everyone has to be a Black woman to get the information from. So it took me a while to broaden my thinking there, but I definitely will say,
Although we're in good places
that
to
I'm
start.
there, right? Because I found a circle of trust. And for me, I have two older sisters. I have a lot of aunts, so my family structure was always around having women to talk to. And Black women. So I had to expand and really evolve in that space to find people that I can trust to help build in that toolbox as well. So
I love it. That's a really good point. We are a good place to start, by the way. I will say that again. But being comfortable with asking or developing relationships with people that don't look like us to help us move along. Emily, what are your thoughts there?
Well, first of all, your girlfriends, your friends, they're tired of listening to you. They called me and told me to tell everybody that. Because they got the same problem. And I'm going to go back to Dana. She talked about having a board of advisory. And so one of the things that were two shifts that I made, one was getting an executive coach. Now I will say that was really hard for me because I had gotten to a level in my career that I was leading global teams and traveling around, and then someone said to me, you need a coach. What do you mean I need a coach? I'm doing pretty good. Well, if you're trying to get to the next level, what got you here won't get you there. And so I said, okay, I will try this as a coach. And in our first meeting, I'm going on and I'm talking and I'm paying her a lot of money, so I figured that she was gonna sprinkle some dust and some magic and tell me how everyone that I was complaining about, it was their fault. And she looked at me and said, Emily, do you see you? Because I see you. And that was really profound because it moved from me thinking that it was about me knowing it all and about complaining to now, as you were saying, Asha, looking at where I needed to grow, how I needed to expand as a leader as I was growing as a leader. And then I got a career advisory board, and I was very strategic about it. And oftentimes we have mentors, sponsors, peers. I had influencers, I had insiders, and it's not always about title. And it's not about age, it's not about color, it's not about them being in your department. It's about you now strategizing those 5 moves ahead and understanding how to position yourself. And so creating that advisory board that can help you move and help you navigate through some of the terrain. Because I had sponsors, even now as a business owner, they're opening doors I didn't know existed. As the lady that received the award last night from American Express, there were positions created that we didn't know existed. That's because she was being intentional. She was strategizing. She was around the right people, and it was strategic. And so you want to have this advisory board, and you want to do it strategic, and you want to reevaluate it every year to make sure that as you move, it's moving with the right people. Because they will help you, as you were saying, they will help you with understanding that's not a good move for you. That might look like a good opportunity, but that's not the right opportunity for you if you're trying to get here. So if you don't have an advisory board, if you don't have a coach, you need to get one today. Because your career and your next move doesn't start tomorrow, doesn't start in 2 weeks. It literally starts today. And what we often do as people in general is we don't think about it until we think we're going to get laid off, or we get that toxic boss, or the culture shifts. When you wait to that point, now you're playing catch up. So don't play catch up, play chess.
I love it. One last question before we go to Q&A. I've got to ask you, Dana, because we talk about leadership, and it's often about taking care of others. How do you take care of you so that you're best for others, Dana?
I'm still learning that one.
Right. It's a great question. I think, we all spend a lot of time, and if you spend any amount of time in social media, we're supposed to do the self-care. We're supposed to make sure that we do the spa and what we do externally to make sure that we stay right, yes. Whether that's diet or exercise. That's table stakes. Mm-hmm. What's most important to me is your spirituality, your mindfulness. But also another very important thing that I've learned as I've gotten older is putting up those boundaries that we're all, if we're in this room, we tend to be leaders. We tend to be a certain mindset. We're going to work harder. I'm going to get up earlier. I'm going to run faster. I'm going to work harder. And we take on, especially as women, we're nurturers. Oh, not only am I going to do this day job, I'm going to do the night job, I'm going to do the extended family, I'm going to do the community, I'm going to do it all. Because my cape, it doesn't get dirty. But that's not true. And so as I've gotten older, I realized that my cup, I can't fill anybody else's cup if my cup is empty. And what fills my cup is not when I get my hair done or that I spent, some time at the mall, but it's when I take my joy and I give it to others through mentoring or just selfless acts, volunteering. But I can't fill up other cups if I've taken on too much. So I think it's really important that we stay mindful and that we create those boundaries so that we can take care of ourselves, so that we can then, in turn, take care of others.
I love it. Well said, and a great way to end this conversation. Has this been a great conversation? Have you learned? Thank you so much to all of you wonderful, brilliant ladies who are leading like bosses. We're going to go to Q&A now. If you've got a question, please stand up and ask your question. We ask you to limit it to one question at a time and keep it brief so that we stay on schedule here. But the mics are here and here. Okay, we'll start here. Can we turn this mic on here, please? Hold on one second. I think they're coming for you so that you don't have to strain at all. Okay.
All right, my name is Tamika, and I have a question specifically for Dana. You mentioned that you have to balance between being the alpha versus the sigma in the room as a leader. And so my question is, how do you do that? Because I'm struggling with it. So if you could give me some tips or some more insight into that.
Well, I can't sum it up in just a few minutes other than be flexible. I think so often we get in our minds that we're right. And once we get our minds fixated on I'm right or I'm the boss, then we don't see the opportunities in that situation. So at different points in time, I've had to pivot. And it's not easy, and you have to be forgiving of yourself. So it's not an easy question to answer, frankly. But I think if you remain open and flexible, then the situation will kind of, it will reveal itself to you.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
We'll take the question over here next. Go ahead.
Hello. I'm Gail Guest Brown. I'm an executive leadership coach. For those of you who want coaching, I'm here. Emily, you made a beautiful point about at different points you need a sponsor, a mentor, a coach, but you didn't make the distinction, and I don't think everybody knows. What's the difference between a mentor, sponsor, and a coach? And I'd be interested in the other ladies as well. Who has helped you on your journey? Did you have mentors, or was it a sponsor? Just elaborate a little bit on that area for me.
Yeah, thank you. Want to start, Emily? Go ahead.
So I'm like her, that's a loaded question. And see me afterwards because I have a resource for that. However, what I would say is that each one has a different role. And make sure that when you go in and you're looking at your sponsor, you're looking at a mentor, that you have a candid conversation around what the expectations are for each person and if they're truly going to be invested in you. Because a mentor is someone who can help you potentially navigate the industry. They can help you navigate inside the organization. They can help you with the political landscape because the culture and the politics. You have a sponsor, and that sponsor is normally the person that's in the room when they're making the decisions on if you're getting promoted or not.
The rooms you aren't in.
They're in the rooms you're not in. They're the ones whispering your name. Sometimes it can be your boss, but I would always say there should be someone else in that room that's whispering your name. And you want to covet that sponsor. A lot of times, if the sponsor's really nice and they're nurturing, they end up being a mentor. They end up then becoming your problem solver. They end up being other roles. You need to covet them as a sponsor because they can't unhear if you start to give them all your woes. Does that make sense what I'm saying? If you start to tell them how bad you are and how you can't do this and you can't do that, how are they going to and I'm not saying you're not balanced in showcasing to the sponsor, because you don't want them to go in a room and say something and everyone's like, you must not know them. Right. However, you want to make sure that everyone understands their roles and you understand their roles.
That's a really, really great call. I appreciate that. Dana, Asha, you want to answer that? Because I think the question was directed to everyone if they want.
I mean, Emily said it best.
Okay.
I really don't have a lot to add.
I love it. Okay, your next question.
Thank you. Thank you for the pearls of wisdom.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Lakeisha Reed, and my question is for Asha. You talked about expanding and diversifying your network. I would love if you could share a few practices that you applied during the time of reaching out to folks that do not look like you. What were some of the behaviors that you looked for or tendencies that you looked for to help identify who those folks might be for you?
Thank you for the question. A lot of times when I had to expand my network, it was simultaneous with me wanting to expand my role. So oftentimes I would look for job descriptions, whether LinkedIn or other job postings in other companies, with skill sets that were required for a job that I wanted. And then I would go searching for people, even oftentimes on LinkedIn, looking for folks that had that experience and reaching out to them directly. And I tried, that's why I'm so nice to people on LinkedIn, because I did it myself, reaching out to people that I didn't know to ask for feedback and just to share about their experience. And then you take it internally, you know, having those same conversations with people that you may not know and asking them. Most of the time, we like to talk about ourselves. Yeah. So I've had tremendous success talking to people and asking them to talk about themselves. And when you ask them to talk about themselves, they're more willing to share with you expertise and help you expand your knowledge in their specific industry or their function. So that has been helpful for me, just having some candid conversations and asking people to share their own success. That's what
If I can add one thing, she's nice, but everybody won't say yes.
Yeah.
Everybody won't respond. Stay focused on your outcome.
Right.
Stay focused on your outcome. You might have to reach out to 10 people, but if you get your outcome, it was worth it.
And persistence is key. That's the thing. Like, cast your net wide to have some of those conversations.
Was there a different approach specifically when it was people who don't look like you, the ones that you were referring to earlier?
Same approach. It might have taken a little bit more pep talks
Okay.
to build myself up to press in,
Yeah.
but the same approach, yeah.
Thank you.
I would just add one thing, do uncomfortable things.
Yes.
I don't play golf well. I still don't play golf well. I went to games. I went to different situations to meet people who didn't look like me. And if you are with an organization that has employee engagement groups, join different things. Network with people in that way. Find that common denominator, because as said, people love to talk about themselves.
Yeah.
You could find out somebody's kids' activities or an interest, expand yourself, and next thing you know, you're meeting people who look like, that may look different from you, or may be a different age or different economic background, but you'll start seeing the seams of commonality just because you were uncomfortable and put yourself more in their situation to find that common ground.
So diversify the environment.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank
And
you.
one more thing, be willing to invest
Feed me, share.
Be willing to invest in yourself.
Yeah.
So being engaged with some of those organizations and conferences like this, you have to invest in yourself. So that's something that I was very intentional about as well. Oftentimes I may have gone to a conference that a company I was working for may have been there, but my boss or my function didn't support me attending. I pay for myself because I believe in me and I believe in the impact that I can make. So I would encourage you to invest in yourself.
Yes, thank you for
That is some
that.
powerful advice.
you all.
Let's give it a hand for that. Okay? Yes.
Hello, my name is Ivory White, and I have a question just for the entire panel. As you continue to elevate in each of your respective C-suite roles, I would just like to know your feedback and your thoughts on education. We all hear the jarring statistics that Black women have such, we are the highest earners of PhDs or professional level degrees, and I just like to know what are your thoughts about higher education, especially in this current climate where funding is being restricted, funding is limited, and just as us as Black women, as we continue to elevate in our own careers, the importance of education, or do you think it's experience, going back to experience versus education? I know that one person has MBA behind their name, but it could be possible that all of you have those advanced degrees and just didn't list them. But just how has your experience been with or without that, and what do you think?
So I can start. I'll tell you that I was not a big fan of higher education, specifically because undergraduate school for me was very hard. Majored in chemical engineering, Georgia Tech. It was one of those things I was like, if I don't have to do school ever again, that's good enough for me, right? But it wasn't until I recognized that I wanted to shift my career, and I tried so many times to get an HR role without going to graduate school, that I felt like I hit a wall. And because I wanted, again, to get to a place for my own career, and I talked to so many different people in HR, and they were saying, hey, I know you're doing these short-term assignments, and you're doing these projects as an engineer, but you're just not as marketable as someone that has the real-life experience, the degrees, et cetera. So what did I do? I invested in myself. I got a master's degree in HR. I went kicking and screaming. But it's been literally one of the best decisions that I've made. So again, I feel like I like to say, make lemonade, try your best to squeeze the lemons that you have. And if you run into a brick wall, for me, education is the last result.
I love that honest
I'm
answer.
just being
This is
honest.
where we talk honestly.
I'm being honest.
Anyone else want to answer that?
I'll go next. I too, and my mother would be so happy for me to say this. Education is the key. They cannot take it away from you. But education is formal and informal.
Yes.
So I have 2 graduate degrees, but 1, because I wanted to advance in my career. 1, because I wanted to see if I could do it. So your reasons for your education should always go back to yourself, but also because they can catapult your career. But education in terms of academia is one thing, but education can also be a student of your industry, be a student of your company, be a student of the world. In the world we are living in now, you better be a student of the world. And that simultaneous investment in yourself is never for naught.
Right.
Thank you so much. We've got one last question. Thank you so much for that. We've got one last question before we close out. Go ahead.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Maria Masonette, and I work for Nielsen IQ. I'm in a really pivotal moment in my career where I'm leading teams of various people older than me who don't look like me. And so I'd love to know from you all as leaders, what is one mistake you've made as a leader that has redefined how you lead your teams?
I think we need more than 7 minutes, but but go ahead. In summary, what would you all say to that? Great question, in truth, though.
Yes.
I'll start. I would say the first thing is, I'm a mindset person. So the first thing I would say is, mindset you started with, they don't look like me, I'm the youngest person. You have the role, own it. You're there to lead them, lead. Inspire them, listen to them. Because if they're older, help them see that you're allowing them to use their wisdom. Because at the end of the day, everybody wants to be seen, valued, and heard.
Absolutely.
If you lead with the heart and the head, the hands will follow.
That's right.
People will take action and they'll walk with you across off a cliff. So don't worry about the age, the color, the education. You're in the role, own it.
I love it. Ladies, any other final remarks to that, if you all?
Hey.
Okay.
That was well said. Well
Very
said.
Okay, final remarks. I mean, this has been a great conversation. Hopefully, all of you have taken away something that you can go back to your respective places of work and use. I've thoroughly enjoyed this conversation. Final remarks. What were your thoughts when you think about leading like a boss? What would be your final comment to the audience today, Asha?
So my final thoughts would be for you to always be authentically you. And one of the things that I have learned over the years is to just be human. In difficult times, people want to have someone, like you said, that listens to them and values them. So oftentimes I pause in a meeting to just talk to people. And I think part of leading like a boss is being human and recognizing where people are in the world, in their family, etc. And sometimes taking the business off the table for the meeting. If it doesn't feel right, and if it's not a right moment, sometimes people just need a moment to breathe. So for me, that's what I will walk away. Authenticity for me is giving people a moment to breathe. And I think at the end of the day, once they can breathe, they can perform, and they can perform at their best.
I love it. Emily?
I would say, don't worry about being perfect. And as she said, allow your team and you breathe. Because when you're in a meeting, if you can visualize it, I had a lady that I was coaching, and the feedback that I received was that the team, she asked the team a question, and she'd give them like 3 minutes to answer. And then if they didn't answer, she'd give them the strategy. So what did they do? Every time she asked a question, they sit there, watch for 3 minutes, and then she would answer the question.
We've got them.
And then in her response, they never want to do anything. They never want to speak up.
Yep.
So sometimes give them space. And as she was saying, bring the human back in and know that the brain does not know if they're at home and they had an experience, there's a personal thing they're going through. Just because they got on Zoom or Teams doesn't mean that that experience is not still, that emotion's not in their head. So sometimes just knowing this might not need to be discussed today, and then we can do it tomorrow, because at the end of the day, you're human.
Awesome. Last comment, Dana?
I'm going to keep it simple. Keep your head up, and remember this too shall pass. And I loved what Ms. McNeil said yesterday, or maybe it was earlier today. Always look for the day one. You're going to have success today. You're going to have failure today. But tomorrow is another day one.
Love it.
Well said, and way to end this. Thank you so much. Awesome. Thank you, everyone, for attending. Thank you again. We're going to stand up and take a picture. Thank you all so much for coming.